Welcome back to BioShock: The Definitive Story, the series where we discuss the main story of the original BioShock game. Last time, we discussed the medical pavilion, and today we will cover both Neptune's Bounty and Smuggler's Hideout. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if you end up learning something new that you didn't know before, please let me know what that was in the comments below. So sit back, relax, and enjoy BioShock: The Definitive Story, Part 3. Jack arrives at Neptune's Bounty, upon which Atlas tells him that he needs to go to Fontaine Fisheries. Atlas also expresses his criticism of Andrew Ryan, being the one that built Rapture and therefore being responsible for its current state. On the way to the fisheries, Jack is confronted with numerous big daddies and little sisters, and if he decides to save some of them, Tenenbaum informs Jack that the little sisters want to give him a gift, which is near the Gatherer's Garden machine accompanied by a plush bear. After dealing with numerous splices, Jack reaches Fontaine Fisheries and meets Peach Wilkins. Peach Wilkins is the main boss for this level. Like many others, Peach Wilkins, or Peachy, went to Rapture with the promise of being part of Andrew Ryan's great chain and sharing in the wealth of the city. He very quickly found out, however, that this was not meant to be for him, with his main occupation being that of a simple worker at Fontaine Fisheries, gutting and cutting fish. He felt betrayed by Ryan and wanted more. His boss, Frank Fontaine, promised Wilkins something much more fulfilling, and to this end, asked Wilkins to meet after hours at the fisheries. Wilkins, and those others that showed up, became part of Fontaine's smuggling operation in Rapture. The intention here was to provide citizens of Rapture with items of contraband that were only available back on the surface, like certain films, beef, real tobacco, certain cigar brands, Old Tom whiskey, particular weapons, and even cocaine. However, Wilkins soon found himself in a bit of a predicament. On one end, the smuggling ring soon caught the attention of Ryan, who began to crack down on the entire operation. On the other, Fontaine was taking an 80% cut of all the smuggling, and Wilkins and the other men had no choice but to agree, otherwise Fontaine would turn them all in to Ryan. Another smuggler, Sammy G, even discussed snitching to Ryan's police force, but was soon mysteriously killed for this. Other dissenters of Fontaine had a similar fate. As Wilkins stated, we stay on Fontaine's crew and we're gonna catch the gallows. We take a powder and we end up like Sammy G. He mentions this tension in an audio log, stating that he was torn between taking sides and that there must be another way to deal with the situation. However, it's not quite clear what Wilkins did in response. Did he turn in Fontaine to Ryan? Was he caught by Ryan? Did he simply quit? It is never revealed. All that we know is that Sullivan offered Wilkins a deal, turn in Fontaine, and he walks free. But whatever the result, Wilkins became incredibly paranoid that Fontaine was after him, even after Fontaine's death in Rapture. He never actually believed that Fontaine died. This paranoia was no doubt spurred by the years of Adam abuse by Wilkins. Moving forward slightly, when the civil war between Atlas and Ryan occurred, Wilkins took Atlas's side and became his ally, but eventually he and the remainder of the smugglers sealed themselves inside the fisheries. This is where Jack confronts Wilkins. Wilkins is blocking Jack's path to the fisheries, and even with Atlas's backing, Wilkins will not let Jack through, as he suspects Jack could be a double agent sent by Fontaine to kill him. After some toing and froing, Wilkins eventually agrees to let Jack through, but he first must take a photo of a spider splicer with a certain research camera. As Jack explores Neptune's Bounty to discover the camera and take the required picture, numerous audio logs detail the past conflict between Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine. In one log, Ryan expresses his concerns about how vastly Rapture is changing due to Fontaine's efforts with genotypes and nucleotide sequences. Ryan believed he was slowly losing his control over Rapture, and as a result, stated that something must be done about Fontaine. Sullivan, the head of security for Ryan's private forces, expresses in his own log that due to the way the conflict has progressed, it'll either be Ryan taking down Fontaine or Fontaine taking down Ryan. So, finally, who exactly is Frank Fontaine? Undoubtedly, Frank Fontaine is one of the most important figureheads in Rapture's history, right next to Andrew Ryan. Before Rapture, Frank Fontaine went by many different names on the surface: Frank Gorland, Frank Barris, Frank Whiston, and others. He initially worked in a theatre as a stage boy, which is where he learned how to influence audiences through acting and the use of costumes. Thereafter, Frank entered a life of crime, becoming involved in an interstate bookmaking operation. When the FBI investigated him, he assumed the last name of Gorland and even forged a new birth certificate. He then resided in New York, creating up another bookmaking business. In 1946, Gorland conned a man who was deep in gambling debt to sign a loan contract. When that man couldn't pay the interest on the loan, Gorland took ownership of his bar, the Clanger, as collateral. The bar was not only good business, but Gorland could use it to overhear rumors about betting in New York City, which assisted his bookmaking business. Eventually, a federal agent, Voss, who was previously involved in the investigation of Gorland's interstate bookmaking operation, threatened to uncover Gorland's past unless he assisted him to get information about Andrew Ryan's North Atlantic project. This project, of course, was Rapture, but this project, and all of the money being sunk into it by Ryan, piqued the interest of Gorland, who saw it as another chance for more grifting. Gorland began to speak to people at his bar, and found out that someone had died while doing deep-sea construction work for Ryan's business, Seaworthy Construction. With this tip, Gorland went to Ryan's ship, the Olympian, and posed as a federal agent while confronting a deckhand. The man told Gorland that the construction workers were building the foundations for a city under the water. Gorland investigated to obtain further information about Rapture. In one instance, he pretended to be a delivery man of canned food for the construction project. In another, he interrogated the previous owner of his bar, who told Gorland about Frank Fontaine, a smuggler who was giving fish to Ryan's construction workers. This Frank was the owner of Fontaine Fisheries, which itself was a smuggling operation of goods from Cuba to the US. Gorland arranged to meet with Fontaine and convinced Fontaine that Voss, the federal agent, intended to frame Fontaine for drug smuggling. Fontaine became so scared and sold his entire fleet of ships to Gorland in exchange for a large amount of money for safe retirement. But when it came time for payment, Gorland had already fired all of Fontaine's old crew, and with no witnesses left, he killed Fontaine. Gorland then assumed Fontaine's identity and himself became known as Frank Fontaine. With this new identity in hand and his newfound connection to Andrew Ryan, as he now was responsible for supplying Rapture with fish, Fontaine wrote to Ryan, asking him to be allowed into the city so he could set up a fishing business. And he also stated how much he respected Ryan's ideals behind Rapture. But really, this was all a part of another large con job. Fontaine just wanted to use Rapture as a way to make more money. So with all that said, in 1948, Ryan finally agreed and Fontaine was allowed entry into Rapture, and Fontaine even brought a few men with him, such as Peach Wilkins. After his arrival in 1948, Fontaine saw an opportunity to make even more income in Rapture by smuggling high-value contraband items into the city. While this smuggling ring was in full swing, Fontaine was approached by Tenenbaum after the discovery of the first atom slug, and Fontaine agreed that he would fund her research. This is when Fontaine created Fontaine Futuristics and employed both Tenenbaum and Dr. Yisu Chong to research atom and develop both gene tonics and plasmids. After Tenenbaum's research discovered the viability of using little girls as hosts for the atom slugs, which would produce much more atom than by regular means, Fontaine began the Little Sister Orphanage initiative, which was a con in and of itself to get parents to consentingly hand over their own children, who would then be turned into little sisters. Fontaine became the kingpin of atom's commercialization and mass production in Rapture, which gave him a lot of political and social sway, and a level of control that many people said even rivaled that of Ryan. While all of this was occurring, Fontaine was also attempting to gain support over Rapture's poor and lower class, and created Fontaine's Home for the Poor, a charity program designed to recruit people for Fontaine's endeavors. Both the Home for the Poor and the Little Sister Orphanage charities were used by Fontaine to improve his public image, and have Rapture's citizens come to his side over Andrew Ryan's. At first, Andrew Ryan was impressed by Fontaine's initiative, believing that Fontaine was a great example of how those with determination can thrive in Rapture. However, Ryan soon got wind of Fontaine's criminal endeavors, especially his smuggling ring, and Ryan was concerned that the smuggling could threaten Rapture's secret location to the world above ground. So, Ryan enlisted Security Chief Sullivan to investigate and end the smuggling ring, deploying even torture to get information out of Fontaine's cronies. Finally, on September 12, 1958, in a shootout with Ryan's men, Frank Fontaine was killed. But some, like Wilkins, never believed Frank Fontaine actually died. Eventually, Jack finds a research camera and takes pictures of the adjacent spider splicer, and then slowly makes his way back to Wilkins. Additional audio logs reveal more about Fontaine, his smuggling ring operations, and his overall rise in power over Ryan, especially thanks to Fontaine's dominance over Adam and plasmids. Bridget Tenenbaum reveals in a log that she actually turned to Fontaine's smugglers for supplies and funding for her Adam research, after all other reputable research labs turned her down. Tenenbaum even suspects that Fontaine may indeed be running Rapture over Ryan one day. Becoming much more cagey about the smuggling, Ryan instituted the death penalty in Rapture, as he believed strong action must be taken against the smugglers. He wanted to ensure that there was no contact with the outside world. As mentioned before, Sullivan was the head of the investigation to take down the ring, and was very close at one point. Bill McDonough, the general contractor in Rapture under Ryan, also had some things to say about the topic too. He believed Rapture was changing due to Fontaine. He had the Atom, and that made him the governor. All the profit Fontaine was making via smuggling and plasmid sales were just being put back into bigger and better plasmids, and also into building his poorhouses. Again, these were part of Fontaine's charity programs to gain the support of Rapture's poor and recruit them for his own needs. As a result, McDonough was worried that Fontaine would have an entire army of splicers at his disposal. McDonough also sat on Rapture's council with Ryan, and strongly believed that Fontaine should be arrested for all of his thieving and smuggling. However, he expressed to Ryan that they must continue to run Fontaine Futuristics, as it was the biggest thing going in Rapture. So after all of this, Jack returns to Peach Wilkins and delivers him the pictures. However, the path through to the fisheries won't be that simple. Wilkins requires Jack to stow all of his weapons in a pneumatic tube. It is clear at this stage that Jack will have to fight Wilkins and his splicers. Wilkins still does not believe that Jack isn't doing Fontaine's dirty work. So, armed with just plasmids and a wrench, Jack eliminates Wilkins and all of his smugglers, recovers his weapons, and heads towards the exit. As he does, Atlas tells Jack that he's getting closer to Smuggler's hideout, the next level in BioShock, which, as you remember, is where his family is cut off by Ryan's splicers. And as Jack tries to discover the hidden path to the hideout, he finds the very first Power to the People upgrade machine, which allows him to upgrade various aspects of his weapons, such as damage. Finally, as Jack leaves, one ghostly image describes just how dangerous Fontaine really is.
You can't quit. Fontaine will find you. Hey, fuck Fontaine. You don't fuck Fontaine. Fontaine fucks you.
Arriving at Smuggler's hideout, Jack is immediately greeted by another flashback of his parents. Atlas informs Jack that he is stuck outside the submarine bay and needs Jack's help to get him to his family. So Jack heads towards the control room, which contains a switch that will allow Atlas entry into the room where his family is stuck inside a submarine. But Ryan threatens Jack, stating that if he activates the switch, he will know what it's like to truly have Ryan as an enemy. Unfazed, Jack activates the control switch panel, which allows Atlas entry into the room. As Atlas calls out to his family inside the submarine, Ryan quickly sends an army of splicers after both Atlas and Jack. Atlas fends off some splicers attacking him and tells Jack to get out of the control room, which also requires Jack to kill several splicers. But then, as Jack heads towards the submarine with Atlas's family inside, the following sad scene plays.
You ooze in like an assassin, and then you try to sneak out like a thief. You're no CIA spook. Who are you? Why have you come here? There's two ways to deal with a mystery. Uncover it, or eliminate it.
Distraught and saddened over the death of his wife and son, Atlas tells Jack to head to Arcadia. Thank you for watching this episode of BioShock The Definitive Story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Your support really does mean a lot. Also, give a big thank you in the comments to the main contributors of The Definitive Story, who are appearing on the screen right now. They all helped immensely with the script, as did the BioShock wiki site run by Fandom, which is linked in the description below. So until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.